All right. I will hit the
James?
Yep.
Awesome.
It just takes that one and go past it. I handed it with 30 years.
Okay, we're ready to hit go.
I was vice versa. I was chubby.
So I actually went to get a loud enough for you to get.
I stepped.
We got 50 seconds.
You just want to wait till 7?
No.
Okay.
She, well, so here recently, they've had, well, whenever they had state volleyball, all the teachers were just all rotating around.
It's plenty warm in here. Your new furnace air conditioner system.
I feel it.
Karen, do you want our email phone number every time?
No, just your name is fine. Thank you.
Okay, well, it is 7 o'clock. I appreciate you guys relocating to the community building for the second half of tonight's meeting. I appreciate you all coming down to my facility and looking at it, interacting with my staff. Hopefully you found something positive out of that. I appreciate Kristen Brenner for her presentation and her perspective. Obviously, that's important, and you hear it from her what makes her job and our job easier in a facility. At this presentation, I'm going to introduce our newly elected sheriff, Aaron Dye. Many of you might know Aaron already. Aaron's been a friend of mine since we were both in law enforcement, about the same amount of time. So it's great to have him here. And then if you have questions for Aaron, please ask away. And then when that's concluded, Maureen Keywell, Oak Grove Animal Control, and Lieutenant Salmon, who helps manage our animal control program, will come up and visit with you a little bit. There's some handouts from Maureen Keywell about their program. She put some statistics in there about some area animal control programs that you might find interesting. Okay, without further ado, Aaron, I'll let you come on up, sir.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Aaron Dye. I'm the sheriff-elect candidate for Lafayette County Sheriff's Office. About 2 weeks ago, Josh and I had met for lunch. During our conversation, he asked if I would have any interest in coming to speak with this focus group, kind of about my history in law enforcement, my history with the Sheriff's Office, since I started there in December of 1997. We were in an old building, transferred to a new building. I wasn't in command staff at that time, but I do have clear recollection of that whole process, and just kind of wanted to share that with my experience from that and what we're in today versus what we were in then. I would kind of compare, our facility at the time when I started at the Sheriff's Office. I don't know if any of you guys recall the old Sheriff's Office or not, but it was where our current Sheriff's Office is, and it was a 2-story building. It was built, I think, around 1941, something like that, if I remember correctly. But even in the late 90s and very early 2000s, we had outgrown that facility. Just the modernization of it was not there. We had multiple deputies sharing desks. When the building was built, there was not a big need for multiple plugins then, but we had computers then. There were cords running across the floor with duct tape holding them down, and anytime we would have a departmental meeting, our training room was basically the deputy's office. People were shoulder to shoulder in that facility. It just wasn't what was meeting our need at that time. In 1999, the Lafayette County Commission decided to attempt to pass a half-cent sales tax to build a new law enforcement center. that was, in my opinion now, especially looking back, it was kind of an unanswered prayer that it failed by 60 votes at the time. This facility was going to be out on 24 Highway, west of Lexington. We'd have been about 4.5 to 5 miles from the courthouse. So anytime that we would have court days, anything like that, we would be transporting up to 30 or 40 inmates by car up to the courthouse. You know, the inmates would be outside. There was no such thing as Polycom at the time, which Polycom is it's a camera system and a television, you know, at the sheriff's office and in each courtroom. So our inmates don't even have to leave the facility now, but at that time there wasn't Polycom. So every inmate that needed to go before the judge would have been driven, you know, into town. So in 2002, Sheriff Kerrick Allenbaugh had been elected then, and the county commission took another shot at this, and they developed a focus group like you all have today to determine, you know, the needs and assess what was needed for this new facility. And I believe it was the November election of 2002 that went on the ballot, and it passed. It passed handedly, and that is the facility we're in today. That facility, though, where we're currently at, was torn down, and we moved across the street to a building that was vacant at the time, and that was our sheriff's office. Our inmates were all shipped to Ray County, and our jail staff actually went over there and worked shifts while they were in the process of building ours. It was built in 2 phases, the jail part and the administrative part. So the jail part was done first. We brought all our inmates back from Ray County, and we made like office areas and some of the pods just to make shift to get by. And then they built the administrative side, and that's where we're at today. Some of the things I can share, you know, I'm not an engineer, but from experience of being there, at the time, I feel now looking back that the jail, our facility was probably built for the time and not for the future. And I think that was one of my main takeaways for tonight. And like our training room held about 25 officers, or it would seat 25 people. At the time, we were about that with staff. So when we had a meeting, it didn't take very long. And let me back up a little bit. When we built the new facility, it was exciting, you know, as a law enforcement officer. I felt like, you know, here we are. We had, not that it was the Taj Mahal or anything like that, but it was comfortable working there. It was, you know, we didn't have, I could go on and on about the stories of the old jail. It was just, it had served its purpose. And this new facility, just the morale of the whole agency lifted when we were in this new building. We had a proper interview room. We had a proper evidence room. The list goes on of what we had. You know, we were all proud of it. And still to this day, we take very good care of our building because there's still a lot of us that worked in the old building and realize what we had and what we have now. I'm trying to think where to go from here, but the key takeaway, you know, is we had an area, it was our expansion area. It was about 3,000 square feet, give or take a little bit. And that was going to be, the original plan was to add on to the jail to have what we would consider like soft inmates there, work release, stuff like that. It didn't take us very long to figure out that we couldn't do that. We needed this other 3,000 square feet to build onto what we have today. So that area now is a training room that I mentioned earlier that we outgrew pretty quickly. We built a larger training room in there where it holds about 50 staff members. Our evidence room, we ended up doubling the size, or actually tripling the size of our evidence room. We also outgrew that very quickly. Some cases, homicides, sexual assaults, stuff like that, you never know how much physical evidence you're going to end up with until the case falls in your lap. And that evidence you have to keep forever. So, you know, our storage area, we had to add on to the evidence room. We built 5 additional offices for our detective units that went to that back hallway. And then, again, the training room. Right now, as we speak today, we're adding on 2 additional offices back in that expansion area. And that has taken the expansion area to capacity. We have no more room for growth, you know, now. And we've been there 20 years this year, and we'll be there 20 or 30 years in the future. So we're going to be real creative what we do moving forward. to make sure that we have adequate space and everything. We've grown as an agency, since 20 years ago. We have 33 commissioned officers and about 20 non-commissioned officers. And commissioned officers, someone that's graduated the police academy as a post-certified police officer. Non-commissioned is that they did not have a police commission. A lot of those are jail staff, kitchen staff, dispatch, all that, those employees. So again, my biggest takeaway would be to tell you all to really focus on what you're building. Don't build it for today, build it for 20 years down the road. And, we'd be happy. I think that Josh has talked about you guys coming and touring in our facility. I would recommend that, touring some other local facilities to get some ideas and anything we can do to help with this process, we'll be glad to help. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer anything. And that's
What's your staff, what staff did you said it went from 25 to 50, would you say, in the 20 years?
In 20 years, I'd say rough numbers, we had probably 30 total. Now we're at 50 total, 50, 52, 53 total.
So in 20 years, you went from 30 staff to about 50 staff.
Correct. Comparing, I know that we have a jail. I don't know what the build project is here with the jail, but at the time, we had roughly 60 inmates. Now we have 110 inmates. So we've basically doubled on our inmates, which creates more staff, for the jail side and stuff too.
So how much of that doubling in staff is attributable to doubling the size of the jail?
The jail, I think, was built, as far as the jail area, we can't expand there. It was built to be like 120 bed capacity.
But I mean, from the time you had 25 in staff and you had capacity in the old jail of, you said 60?
Yeah, 60.
To doubling your staff with a new jail of a capacity of 150. How much of that increase from 60 to 150 in staff is attributable to staffing that larger jail?
I think all of it would be
So from the growth of the county in 20 years,
mhm.
you're saying the increase in staff is not attributable to the growth of population in the county. It's just for managing the jail.
That side would be managing the jail. They are in the facility only. I think where you're headed, maybe the road patrol side would be growth of the county. They're out working the road. And
We're not maintaining a big jail for the county, so
correct.
we can't really equate the increase in staff
Yes.
to the
Yes.
increase in population
Yes.
and say that's going to be applicable to us.
Correct.
So how many officers did you grow in that 20 years?
As far as patrol officers, I think we've grown 3 probably, and 2 or 3 detectives since in that 20-year time frame.
So if you were to compare that to a municipal police agency, 5 to 6 in a 20-year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, James, did you have something to say?
You guys kind of hit on where I was going. I was just going to ask about the roadside of it, as far as how many guys he had on at a time 20 years ago versus how many guys he has on now.
Some of that is kind of changing because our shifts have changed. We went from 8-hour shifts to 12-hour shifts. So, but as far as on the road, we try to have 3 on during the peak hours and then like 2 on overnights. And that hasn't changed. Sometimes there's 4 on during, day and evening, and then 2 during the overnight. But some of that, like I said, is the shift has kind of changed some of that too. So
How do you have it set up there at the sheriff's department as far as do you guys have hoteling stations where they can come in and do report writing, or are they assigned an individual cubicle for any time?
as far as the deputies go, they have their own deputies office, which seats 4 stations. But going back 20 years, we didn't have in-car computers, and we didn't have they basically have an office in their patrol vehicle, and that's what they work out of. Whenever I was doing that 20 years ago, I had to come to the sheriff's office to do everything, to write a report, to do anything like that. They can pull over in a parking lot and get on their laptop and type out a report. So a lot of that has changed. They're not which is good too, because they're out in the field more than they're in the department. So that's a big plus to that. But as far as the workstation, there's a deputy's office with 4 workstations in it, but they're not there very often at all anymore because their workstation is basically their patrol vehicle. So.
Okay.
Great question.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Good, take care.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. And again, I think that when you get a chance to tour the sheriff's office and interact with some of those staff, you'll be able to, maybe between now and then, you'll have additional questions you'll want to ask, but you'll be able to put something to what Sheriff Dye just explained to you about how their growth, how their department was designed, and then the growth over the 20 years. Okay, next, I'm going to introduce Animal Control Officer. Is that the best title? Okay, ACO Maureen Keedwell. She is part of this Odessa community, and I've known Maureen for many years now. Wonderful person. She was the Animal Control Officer for the city of Oak Grove, and I'll let her explain a little bit about what they do and how animal control is offered to the Oak Grove community. That might give you a little picture of our young animal control assignments here in Odessa. And then I also have Lieutenant Salmon. You guys met Lieutenant Phil Salmon over at the police department. He heads up the supervision of the animal control. I'm without an employee right now. That's why I have you visit with the one who's actually doing the work in Odessa, but Phil kind of fills that role in right now for me. So without further ado, I'll let you both come on up. There's some handouts that Maureen, that I brought around for you too.
So, I did the handouts just because animal control, in our smaller communities, we've got certain regulations we have to meet according to the state, but they all handle it kind of differently, as you'll see. In Oak Grove, I do animal control and I do nuisance abatement. Lamar, Missouri does the same thing. Lexington does the same thing. Some don't, some are just strictly animal control, do their animal control and shelter. Trenton did not have a shelter, so they work with a vet office and a shelter that they have in town. They don't contract with them, but they do use them when they have space for them. So that's kind of different. In Oak Grove, we were holding a vet clinic when I started, and which was fine, but we paid daily for our animals. And the number of animals that we can take in a year, I'm at 175 right now. Of course, they wouldn't have all been impounded, but at $15 to $18, $20 a day, that adds up. When the state requires that you hold them 5 business days to see if an owner claims them before I can even think to put them up for adoption. And then I got to hold them time to find somebody that wants to adopt them, which right now, animals are moving very slow. So that's why I pushed the city of Oak Grove. Like, if we could get a shelter, we can hold the animals longer at a cheaper rate, kind of. And we did get that done. It helps. It's more of a help for the animals that we're not holding in the vet clinic, because we can hold them longer. More work for the staff probably, but it's better for the animals in the long run. And I will say, as part of the Oak Grove community, as with any community, a lot of them don't like animal control because they think, oh, we want to just take their dog and kill them, and we don't. But we do have a great citizen backing in that city. Donation-wise, if we get down on something, man, they support us. They'll give us what we need. And so in that fact, I like having the shelter for them, because it did decrease like impound fees for them. And it gives us just a little more chance to be, I think, more educational and work with them. Having our own shelter kind of gives them a place to go.
So she told you guys her numbers, that she's at 175 for the year. We run in between 80 and 100 on average is how many dogs that we take in. Some of those dogs we may have for 10, 15 minutes while the owner comes up to pick them up. And then other dogs we've had up to 4 months before. We try our best to make sure that if a dog is rehomable, that if it goes up for adoption, we get it rehomed. We try not to have to put any animal down unless it is one that is not fit to go to a home, that it's going to be a danger and liability to rehome.
So we're the same way. Some dogs we get in, we get them turned right back out. Some, again, we held on for 4 months. Work closely with rescues. But like I said, I gave you the list with other shelters on there so you can see how they do different things. There's different things. I would be what we call, I guess, managed intake. So we try to intake any stray that comes in. Any stray we will take, no questions asked, no matter how full we are. We take a stray off the street. That's it. Owner releases, only limited, depends on the circumstances, because if we took every owner release, I would be full and I would be putting dogs down every day. If they're going to take a dog, it's kind of their responsibility to either keep it as a pet or to find a home for it. But it's not that I leave them cold. I've got lists of rescues. I work with people to get them out, but so I would do what we call managed intake. If I'm full of strays, I'm not going to take an owner release, and I'll tell them that. Some are open intake. They take owner releases, they take strays, they take everything, and they'll put them down if they have to. Don't want to, but there's no pet overpopulation problem that I don't know how we're going to correct that. And then your rescues are more they'll only intake what they want, but that's rescues, and that's completely different than being a municipal town. And as far as legality, I do have this if anybody wants to see it. We do have to answer to the state on how the animals are housed, and this has got those rules in it. They've already been inspected by the state, I'm sure, several times, and we get inspected too. Our current inspector in this area, she's very hard and she's very strict. We've had cage issues, like 24-inch cage for a cat. My cage was 23.5 inches. They were going to fail me over that. But we talked to the big guy, got it all worked out. My cages still fail, but they're kind of grandfathered in for now. So if I ever get new ones, I have to up them 1/2 inch. But they're standard cages from, I got it from KC Pet Project. KC Pet Project had these for years, and you guys were fine because I'm inspected by the same inspector. But there are a lot of regulations that you'll have to meet with the state. So I would say really is if you have questions, ask me. I don't know what you need to know, but our shelter itself, we're in an old police building. Actually, it's an ambulance building, and then it's a police building. Now it's the shelter and the emergency management. So my kennels are in the ambulance bay. So we've got a drain, not the best drainage setup, but that's always something to consider because you're going to have a lot of stuff going through your drain. It's really tall. Sound is horrible. The 2 dogs will sound like we've got a kennel full of 20. So there's some drawbacks of working with a building that was existing to get our shelter in there. But we did it. And again, I think it's better for the dogs in the community in the long run. We do pass on a limited basis, sick and injured only. But if you look at my numbers, I adopted out some cats because we take them in, we do get them better, and we'll adopt them out if we can. Does anybody have any questions?
How many pens do you have? How many kennels do you have?
I have 11 dog kennels, 10 are 4 foot by 5 foot, and 1 is 4 by 4.
Are they indoor, outdoor?
No, I wish, but no, they're just strictly
Indoor,
indoor.
okay.
But we do have an outdoor play yard. I got pictures of that there. Again, they're required to have so much exercise a day, so much daylight hours a day. So we have timers on our lighting. So like on holidays, we'll go in, do kennels and leave, but our dogs are still meeting what the state requires as far as lighting. They'll get their exercise. And we had a semi-quarantine. If you notice, a lot of them didn't have quarantine. I think one of them had actually 2 quarantine rooms, which is, if you can have a quarantine room, is great. Because if you do bring in a sick animal, or not expose it to somebody else's dog that might just be waiting to go home, or wants to get home going sick. But you will deal with fights. and you really should have a quarantine place for cats, dogs that are in quarantine hold. So that you don't have public near them, limited access to them. We don't get a lot, I mean, we do a lot of bites, a lot of quarantines, and we don't have a lot of rabies because of that, but we did have positive rabies last year, so it's always in the back of our mind to be proactive against rabies.
So Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's actually you and someone else
Yes.
that both do their job over there in Oak Grove. And on the weekends, you guys still come in and take care of the animals, not the officers, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so for us, we will ideally have one person doing it. And whenever that person's not available on a holiday, on weekend, they're out sick, what have you, we take care of it, okay? So that's why in the initial design, they had it in the building. You know, the kennels were in the same building so that the officers not having to go off-site to take care of it. They can go take care of it and then they can go back and they can finish up on the report, what have you. We've also looked at external sites that we could build it where it would not be necessarily on site there, and also different materials that would be constructed with rather than necessarily inside this police building to try to save money that route as well.
And Higginsville does the same thing. They have one officer, and then when he's not there, the day officers will go and take care of the dogs for them. A lot of them, the smaller shelters, they always talk about having volunteers. We don't have volunteers. A lot of them I call do not have volunteers just for liability reasons. Because if I'm not in the office, that leaves them without a city employee in the office with them for liability reasons. So we don't do it for that reason. Volunteers could help, you know, like with holidays and evening cleaning, but we don't. So we do have two officers. We split. I work Monday through Friday. She works 3 days during the week and then the weekend. So we do cover, and then we're just on call for any other calls that we have to run. Does anybody have any questions? To me, this is one of those things you're not going to know until you actually do it.
I would imagine any kind of capacity at any other city shelter or nonprofit shelter is probably pretty non-existent.
The nonprofit shelters or your rescues, most of them are in-home. So they'll have one person that will license, and then they will get foster people to take them into their homes. So they don't generally have a facility where their dogs go and stay.
But to answer your question, I think where you're going with it, yes. When we've been full in the past, we've tried to call these shelters and stuff, and we have to work weeks upon weeks to be able to get a dog placed into a rescue most of the time, or into a nonprofit shelter that can house them longer term. I mean, there's been several times over the last couple of years that we've been at full capacity. We're lucky right now that we're not. Earlier this week, we had 2, but we're lucky right now that we're not at full capacity.
Or even just temporary housing. I've had a couple of people suggest to me, well, why can't you hire someone that has a kennel to keep the animals temporarily, you know, for whatever period that you have to keep.
Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, but if, and I appreciate your question. I'll just weigh in on this just a little bit because I did my own research. Correct me if I'm wrong, but our regs, if we, from the Department of Agriculture, if we foster that dog to somebody to care for us, we're responsible for that person's property.
Yes.
And how they manage their kennels at their property, because the dog was taken in under our license. Is that correct?
Right. No, it would be, the way it would work is if you took a dog in, say, to your shelter and you foster it out to somebody that's going to watch, you don't do that till your legal hold time is up.
Gotcha.
Because you're responsible for that
5 days or
property for that
7
5
days or
business days,
okay.
yeah. But if you might be talking about what they call a contract kennel, where that's kind of what Kansas City's currently, until maybe today or tomorrow, doing with KC Pet Project.
Right, okay.
KC Pet Project is their contract kennel. I believe the animal control is going back to the police department over there, so they will pay KC Pet Project to hold their animals. And that's always a possibility. I don't know where you're gonna find a shelter to do that right now.
And one of
Is
the
a contract kennel feasible or no?
We used to contract with the vet's office in town to house our dogs, and it was extremely expensive and a lot more feasible to have it ourselves.
Now, does Grand Valley bring you guys animals?
No, they actually still hold it at that clinic.
They hold theirs at the.
They hold it at that clinic, yeah. I'm trying to think, like Grain Valley, was it Grain Valley? No, Blue Springs, which is another one that's been kind of crazy lately. They used to be with the police department, and they would contract with Lee Summit Animal Control to take their animals out there. Then 3 or 4 years ago, they contracted with the rescue group Opportunities, and so Opportunities with their rescue group had they had a shelter. They didn't have a shelter. They had the holding facility from Blue Springs at that time, but they had their fosters, and so they would take them out of the Blue Springs hold period after that time was up, take them into their foster and then, or to their rescue, and then foster them out from there. But it's currently going back to the Blue Springs Police Department, and they've got a small shelter, and Lee Summit was gonna hold for them for 30 days, and I don't know what's happening after that.
So number wise, the cost of, let's say, 6.5 million, the cost of that 6.5 million construction allocable to animal control would be how much?
Oh, you mean the little room that we had in there? So on the 6.5, we actually took animal control out. So we'd have to go back to the 8.4 design.
So the 6.5 doesn't have any.
Correct, we took it
So
out.
how much would the animal control building cost?
Well, the building itself, if we went off site or within
The
the,
animal control,
in the police facility.
yes.
So we figured that at about 200,000 of the 8.4, yes.
And how many animals a year did you say that would take in?
In between 80 and 100 dogs. Right now, we do not take cats whatsoever.
And how many
If you guys want to give us a place to be able to house them and staffing, we'll have to have staffing get approved through the council and stuff like that to be able to take care of those. Because right now, technically, our codes enforcement officer and animal control officer are the same person. So they've got to split that role. And right now, that can be very tasking for one person to do. And so if you also add on taking in cats, because I'll admit it, there's an out of control cat population. That's everywhere, not just here, but here, when we try to encourage people to get their cats fixed so that they're not adding to that population. But to do any spay neuter release programs, any of that, we're going to have an adequate place to put these animals, and you're going to have staff. And right now, we don't have either one.
I'll tell you honestly, big shelters, little shelters, most of us, the National Animal Control Association actually recommends you don't take in a perfectly healthy cat. Perfectly healthy cat has a better chance of going back home on his own than the owner coming to pick him up. For some reason in Oak Grove, we do not fit into that. We get our cats returned to owners. We don't know why. It's an oddity. But when you hold them for 5 business days, my cat could go missing for a week. Cats do. People don't think about it. By the time they do think to call the shelter, we've either euthanized the cat, adopted it, or transferred it out. They'll go home on their own if you don't feed them. But dogs are a little different because they can cause issues and they can bite and things like that. But most shelters don't take cats on a regular basis because if you did, you will be so full. Like I said, we do sick and injured only, and I'm like at 27 this year, and that's just the sick and injured. So I wouldn't recommend taking in perfectly healthy cats. We reworked our ordinances so that we don't put a leash law on cats. If you're going to feed stray cats, it's required that you have to have them spayed or neutered, have paperwork readily available if I show up. And then there's a limit and stuff on that. And then if you have your own personal cat and you're going to let it outside, city ordinance requires it to be spayed or neutered if it's outdoors.
And Bruce, I'll just add one more point to maybe where you're asking on the 200,000 in that and why we took it out. There are standalone buildings if an off-site location were located and we had proper staff to manage it, that you could do for less than $200,000. We know that. That's why that program, even though we want to offer it to the community, we felt there's a possibility to offer it at a better cost to the community than putting it inside the building. Again, the reason it was put in the building was because of staffing. The police officers only had one person doing animal control, and it was half her job. And the police officers have to take care of those animals too on the weekends and nights. So putting it there was to allow them access to victims and other parts of their job. But then we found that it might be more cost effective to take that out and do a standalone facility. So that's why it was removed from the 8.4 facility. So that was a great question, and how, I just wanted to make sure I did a good job of answering.
Thank you.
Do we have any ordinance on cats? Kind of like they had?
Related to nuisances, we do. I mean, if cats are, entering someone's property, we get quite a call. I'll use an example, using the bathroom in their flower bed. Well, that can be a nuisance and a city ordinance violation. We can figure out whose cat it is, then yes, we can issue tickets or, reprimand the person or whatever we need to do. But as far as like a cat at large, no, we don't have those.
Or spay or neuter.
Or we don't have a spay or neuter ordinance.
And I'll tell you honestly, to kind of bait that whole cat situation, because we get that call, cat just in the flower bed below my window and it smells. I've got flyers. I'm like, you know what, if I trap, especially feral cats, if I trap feral cats out, another one's gonna show up, same with wildlife. So trapping is not our ideal solution at all anymore for cats or wildlife. But I do have flyers to tell them, this is what you can do to keep them off of your property. If your neighbors don't care about them, let them deal with them. But here's what you can do to keep them off your property so they're not bothering you. And then if your neighbor calls, well, we'll just move them down the street. We can all just kind of start pushing them out, because the little lady down here wants to feed them all anyways. But yeah, that's how we handle a lot of our wildlife and cat calls.
How often do you refer out to like rescues?
Pretty much all my winter releases. And like I said, I like to take this as a very educational job. I would rather educate someone than just take their dog or write them a ticket and stuff. So, if someone calls me like, hey, my dog, he's starting to growl at my kids, and I can't have that. He needs a home. Someone that's got more time for him. No, you're taking your problem and pushing it off on somebody else. And I tell them that in a nice way. And I will usually tell them I can't take it, and even if I could, I would euthanize it because it's a liability, and I'm not going to adopt out a dog that's a liability. Love animals, love them, but to save them all is just not feasible. I look at a dog, wouldn't want him to be my neighbor, so I won't adopt that dog out. If I do want it to be my neighbor, I try to get my neighbors to adopt it. But yeah, so.
I'll use Marina as I'll plug her and tell her how wonderful she is. We've had some very dangerous dogs. You've read the papers, you've seen the news, and I've worked some very dangerous cases. Bill and I remember one very vividly, where a young boy was seriously injured. And Marine in Oak Grove, we borrowed her. We didn't. Our animal control was just starting. We hadn't had an employee. We don't have a facility. She came over. She helped us capture this dangerous animal. She helped us get it to the vet so it could be properly euthanized. And I really thank her for that. And I thank Oak Grove for loaning her over, but we utilized her, and we utilized her a lot. And I thank her for coming in and sharing her experience with you all. They've had animal control for 15, 20 years?
Something like that.
So ours is 5 years old. We are young, and we're trying to get the experience in there. A facility would assist in that, we believe, to be able to offer those services to the public, which I think the public really wants. So that's what we wanted to present to you all, so that you guys could bring that within your discussions. If you feel that that is a need, we would want some input from you all on how we can fulfill that part of our job. So did you guys have any questions for Marine?
The medical fund you guys have set up with the local vet's office, is that primarily city budget, or do you guys take donations from the community?
Oak Grove does not have an animal control budget, so I do take animals to the vet, and I just kind of watch how much I'm spending on them. But no, this medical fund has all been donations. I've got businesses that raise money for us, unasked for, but they will do it. I just got a groomer yesterday, donated $200, donated from Giving Tuesday. So many grooms, she donated so much money off of every groom for Giving Tuesday, and they gave that to us. Goes into our medical fund. If someone calls and goes, hey, we want to donate money, send it to the Betsley's, it's our medical fund. And then we can use that to take care of animals that are, severely injured that we think could be fixed and adopted out, but we also use it to decrease the price of adoption. So that helps a lot there.
That's a good question, a great question. We get donations too, not necessarily monetary. We did get some monetary help with spaying of 3 dogs.
3 dogs.
Because that helps with the adoption. We have free adoptions. We don't charge you to come adopt this dog, but law requires that dog be spayed or neutered. And if it's not already at adoption, that would be at the adopter's expense. Well, to be able to adopt these dogs out, we had gracious folks from the community donate the money to have a vet properly do that, and those weren't tax dollars. We do have a small animal control budget. It's about $3,500 annually to help maintain the animal, buy equipment. As we're starting up this, we're finding out through advice, that, well, we need some of these, and we need this, we need a control stick, or we need a, bite gloves, or, whatever, with different types of traps. So we are, buying additional equipment to help provide an employee the proper stuff to do their job. But we get dog food donated to us. I don't know the last time I actually bought dog food for the pound. Most of that is folks like you, gracious community members that say, hey, I got a bag of dog, I got food, I'd love to donate to you all, and they bring it up, and that's what we feed our animals in the pound. So,
And people do, not to interrupt you.
no, that's great.
We get the same thing. We have people who are like, oh, I lost my dog. I don't want to go through that again. I'm not getting another dog. But they'll donate to us kind of in place of having their own dog. Christmas time, they all want to make the animals in that shelter happy. So we get toys, we get blankets, we have so much stuff donated that we actually share with rescues. We work with Wild Souls, Wildlife Rescue. I donate to them. You need me to spend more? But yeah, we all kind of work together. So if you have a shelter, like I said, the rescues will help and everything. And your citizens, they want to help those animals.
That's a great question.
So Maureen, to kind of, I think, answer one of the questions that they probably have in their minds that I thought of. So recently, whenever you guys built your facility, yes, it was already a city-owned facility.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you recall, or approximately, was it for you guys to remodel that facility into what it is now and to furnish it with the equipment that you guys needed?
So some of the equipment we had, but I was given a $40,000 budget to turn that into an animal shelter. With that being said, KC Pet Project had built their new multi-million-dollar thing, and they were emptying out their old one, and they called me and they're like, if you want cat cages, get down here. Loaded up the stock trailer full of cat cages. So I used those, got those for free. I did have to buy brand new dog kennels. That's probably the biggest part of my budget. You'll see that it's multicolored. And I did that just to make it kind of cheery, because if I just did the black and the blue, it would be dull in there. And I figured colored paint versus black and blue paint, not much different in price. We did some stuff up there. One of the girls, our city clerk, did all the fancy bark, live, love bark and stuff in there, just to make it a little more, not so blah. But our budget was $40,000. Probably went over just because as we got into it, we found there were some needs. Like just the hose, they ended up with a really nice hose reel. We got hot, cold water in our thing. That wasn't really in our budget. We changed out the lights. But my boss at that time, we gave him a credit card, but he started buying me stuff, and I wasn't going to say no. So, but yeah, our budget was, we probably went to about $50,000 getting it up and started.
That just kind of an idea that they already had the building, it's just
Yeah.
the remodel and expenses.
And it really wasn't even a remodel. We just took the, what was it? It was the sergeant's office became a cat room. The booking room became our office. The evidence room is my quarantine room, and the ambulance bay is my dog kennel. So we did have to cut a new door, and I think that was probably one of our bigger things, and add a wall. But so there wasn't a whole lot of remodeling, but we still were probably $50,000.
I do have to say, I love y'all's Facebook page.
Thank you. Yes.
I do follow that, yeah. It's a
Thank
good time.
And what year did that remodel happen?
Let's see here. I got approved to do the shelter in March of 2019. Then we kind of went through an overhaul in our administration, so I kind of got put on hold. Then COVID hit, so I got put on hold again. And then January 2021, I started, and because of COVID, everything was on back order, so it took me till 2022 to get it put together, and then we opened in January 2022. Like I said, if anybody has questions about what the state's gonna require of you, I've got that stuff here. I've got business cards. If anybody wants to call me and come by my shelter at some point, I'll be glad to show you around. It's not big, it won't take long. And if you have questions that come up after tonight, you can still call me. I'll give you my opinion or my answer or whatever.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate you
Thank
coming.
you.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. All right. Yes, good. Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
I'll make sure that you guys get a business card before you leave tonight.
I have a question for you. How much,
Me?
yeah, how much would it cost to separate the codes enforcement and animal control into their own positions?
So take one position into two,
Yeah,
or another position, so, salary and benefits, I would estimate 75,000. Is that inaccurate?
No, with benefits and everything, no.
When you add benefits on top of the salary, probably another 75,000. That's just the budgetary, you might be a little less than that.
It's something that we are trying, we haven't really gotten too deep into the budget process this year, but it's a high priority for this upcoming budget cycle.
so it's something we're already considering doing.
Yes.
Okay, I think
And I
that-
do anticipate that in the 20-year growth as being something we can accomplish. So when we design a building for use, we would definitely want to include an additional position, workspace for that employee, so to speak. We wouldn't want, like Sheriff Dye had mentioned, build it for today or tomorrow. If you build it for today and then tomorrow you add another employee, you're already down space. So I would want you to consider that when you guys, talk through it. That's a great question. Okay.
Open it up for just discussions further.
Yep. So I did give you some handouts. I'll talk about those handouts in a little bit, but I think it's just important. We'll just give you guys the floor and let you guys discuss.
Tonight's presentation.
Yeah, about what you saw tonight, about the police facility tour, animal control, 20-year growth. James Cranville is online. He might, if you have questions for James, or he might have questions for you. We'll try to make sure that we get that audio going so you can hear it, but we'll kind of let you go. And then closer, we'll give you 15 minutes. If you guys are ready, we'll just talk a little bit about the handouts at the end, closer to 8 o'clock. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Do you need to take a break? Do you want them to take a break? We're good
We
to
only
just,
have like 15 minutes.
okay, if you can push through, we'll just push through, I guess.
Chief, I have a question for you.
Yes.
If you had to pick one area of your current setup that you have now that you would like to improve upon, what would be the space that you would like to improve upon?
At the facility that we're at.
Yes. What's the biggest issue that you have?
Big question.
Well, okay, and not to go into the, I'll put it this way. When the department was disbanded, evidence was an issue. Evidence was an issue. When the sheriff's department came in, and you guys spoke with Captain Lisi, he was the lieutenant of the sheriff's department in this, working as sheriff's deputy in Odessa at the time. And they spent a tremendous amount of time correcting some things. And what you see now is the best we can get. And it's functional, but a proper place for my staff who deal with, I'm just going to throw out fentanyl. We take it off the streets, where they don't have to eat their dinner right next to it. I just think that we owe a safe place for my staff to process evidence. So if you told me one thing and all I could pick was one thing, it would be property management and evidence management in the department. And there's a lot. I would love for, my staff to not be right there confronting an angry person in the lobby too, but the one thing would be probably my property room, evidence room.
Well, and I know I talked to Sergeant Zarda
Yes.
up there quite a bit. So, he was even giving us some instances of, they've been in there doing evidence or something. Somebody brings in somebody needs to get a DUI scan or whatever they need to get, and they have to kind of, jockey that around, or they're doing an interview and the same thing happens. They have to move everything around. And I can see how that would be very frustrating, having that as kind of a multi-use space, and then just kind of, peeked into the evidence room as much as I could. It
capacity.
seems it's very full. Yeah.
It's full. It's at capacity. I'm not saying that I would never take evidence in, but if we ran into one or two major cases where we needed to take more evidence in, I would have to come up with another mechanism to get that accomplished, because we just don't have the space for it. And that's a great, discrete conversations. I mean, I'm an administrator, and occasionally I have to talk to my staff and teach them, educate them about a better way to do something, right? Well, there's no place to do that. Is it fair for that staff to sit at my desk when every other staff member is doing work? No, I go to the back room. Well, if I'm having that discrete conversation and another staff member comes through that door, well, then, we get sidetracked, we get distracted. It can be embarrassing sometimes for the staff member, to be talking with the chief and hear another one came in and know what's going on. So, it's that room's used for a lot. It's what we have, it's what we're offered, but, in a better world, it would be a better place to do some of those discrete conversations. Great questions. I'm here for more questions if you have them. Certainly ask away.
James, go ahead.
So Josh, I have a question as far as evidence goes. Nathan Holt, that's on the committee here, and I are both certified in evidence processing. The question I have is, let's say you get a homicide where you've got a lot of blood splatter or fresh blood that you need to hang stuff up to dry, or you've had a sexual assault where there's a lot of just bodily fluids out there that need to be properly dried and all that before it's packaged and sent off to the lab. What's kind of the process now that you would have for something like that? And what would be the new facilities that you've had previously designed? Did that go into account into designing that new facility?
Yep, great question. So if you couldn't hear, he asked about some of us in law enforcement. You've seen the CSI shows, so we deal in fluids, right? Blood, semen, saliva, all that stuff. That's what we deal in. So the question was, how do we process that and store that at the current facility? And I'll tell you, it's difficult. We can get it done, but it's difficult. We have utilized outside agencies to help us do that. The Sheriff's Department, they've got a facility that can help us dry blood-soaked clothing, or in some situations, blood-soaked blankets or flooring if flooring is taken in a crime scene. So at this point, if it's a large crime scene, our facility couldn't handle that for the processing. We would have to use an outside agency. I would send my staff there, but we'd have to use their department to help process that evidence. And the Sheriff's Department would be it. So that takes one of my staff to Lexington to get that accomplished, and then relocate that when it's able to be relocated back to Odessa, right? So those are some great questions, and for Mr. Holt, who's in crime scene, who kind of understands what we have to do to get that accomplished. If there's smaller cases, drug cases, we will process those at the police department. We try to sanitize the area before and after, because we certainly don't want methamphetamine or some other controlled substance to stay on a surface where someone later on might come in and eat their dinner. So we try to do our best to sanitize that area, but is that a foolproof plan? Not necessarily. James, did I answer all of your question about how we would handle that?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of give everybody an idea that, there are times where you need a bigger space than just shelving.
Sure. And so then the second part of this question was, in a new facility, what could be discussed? What could you all discuss and what could I help you answer about how that facility is designed? Well, typically new, and you will see this when you tour some of these modern facilities, and I'll talk about that towards the end, about that itinerary. An area where an officer can safely process and then store that processed evidence, but if it needs additional processing like biologicals, there's an area within the evidence-controlled, air temperature controlled facility, right? On a really hot day, you guys weren't going to smell it today, but on a really hot day, you can smell the marijuana in front of my staff, in front of my police department. And I will tell you that Jenny Rydell, my clerk, has gotten a little nauseous, and myself, from smelling that day after day, you know, because it filters through the attic and then back down through the climate control system that we have. But in a modern evidence facility, it's on its own climate control system. You don't have to worry about that filtering back into your workspace or a space where you're interviewing a victim or something to that nature. So those are things to consider. And obviously you'll see the sheriff's departments and you'll see Sedelia's and hopefully I can get the Oak Grove one set up. You'll see how they handle their evidence, and there's climate control separation between the work area, administration area, I guess you would say, and the evidence control area. So, yes, sir.
Speaking of that, the climate control, is there ever any evidence that needs to be refrigerated?
Yes. And you might not have seen it. I have an evidence refrigerator that's not very big, that holds simply just urine and blood, but there's other, back in my evidence room, there is another mini fridge that holds some biologicals. If it's for long-term storage, I will have to contract with the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and we have to send that evidence to Jeff City. In a modern evidence room, we would have a better refrigeration system, an area that would be able to hold that on scene, instead of, if I need a report, I'd have to drive to Jeff City, pick it up, and bring it back to Lexington for court. So that's how we have to do it now. I just don't have a facility for it. Great question.
Hey Josh, can I add one thing there?
Sure.
So I was just gonna add, you were talking about the smell of marijuana and stuff. I was just gonna add, when you don't have a proper climate control evidence room, the mold that tends to grow on illegal narcotics, especially like marijuana, hashish, creates health issues for all the staff involved there. I've been affected by that. I actually had to have surgery after being exposed to that. So we don't want to expose our officers if we don't have to.
And that's a great example. You know, when the sheriff's department came in and found some of those initial evidence problems and worked to fix those problems, mold was the largest culprit of those problems. Not just mold on the plant material that we sometimes house, but some of that biological material wasn't properly packaged and or maintained, and the environment was also not maintained, so that mold was allowed to thrive and grow, and some of that evidence was completely destroyed. And you heard from Kristen Hilbrenner tonight, who explained how sometimes those cases come back up years later through appeal, and we have to present that evidence years later occasionally, and those are problematic cases that can be the difference between an acquittal or a guilty verdict on a particular case. So you had a question, Jan?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of touch on it. Like, how long do you keep the evidence like in-house? Do you have like a storage that you move like 15-year-old evidence to, or is it just in there for life? Is it like a constant rotation of stuff coming in and out?
Great question. So our police software does help us identify when evidence is nearing the ability for destruction. You know, we've been getting, I'll use marijuana as an example. Felony marijuana cases before the constitutional amendment required us to keep those X amount of years. But after the constitutional amendment, you started seeing individuals getting those convictions expunged off of their record. And once those are expunged and those court orders come through, that evidence is no longer necessary to keep. And we would start the process of getting court orders. We don't ever destroy anything without a judge or all the folks to be sign off saying this is okay to be destroyed. And then when we do, we'll incinerate those items. But let's talk about a homicide. I've got cases in my evidence vault that go back years, right? That are homicides that occurred in this jurisdiction. And we keep those forever. Sexual assault cases are 20 years and sometimes forever. I've got, rape kits in my evidence vault that are, 40 years old because we're required to keep those. And we have to keep those in controlled environments. We do the best we can. We've controlled the environment better than it was, prior to my administration, but, obviously a better system is out there. Hopefully we can, get that accomplished through this process. But yes, we do go through destruction orders, so it's not like I just keep piling evidence up in there. But I will say that crime happens sometimes faster than government, so it takes me a while to get a court order to destroy this, and we're still putting evidence in, and I might take a little bit out, and I'm putting more in, and every year we'll go through a process of destruction. We do every January. Start figuring out what property needs to come out, what needs to stay in. Great question.
Would like to have any discussions amongst yourself about the presentations tonight?
I'm sorry, about what?
The presentations from tonight's meeting?
Also, I had a great conversation with the prosecutor. She's going to get us data. There's more stuff going on in this community than I think we're aware of. She said that she's actually going to put in a hearing, thing together, because we don't really realize what else is happening here. So I think it'll be really good for the community whenever we're going to present this to them, be like, hey, this is actually what's happening.
There's a little tool called CaseNet that some of you might already know about, but you can go see all the filings in Lafayette County, including Odessa, every day if you want to, or weekly if you want to. We monitor a lot of those cases, not just from the municipality, but from the sheriff's department surrounding our municipality, because a lot of their crimes are crime, our crimes their crime. I'll be honest, I don't like to air the city's dirty laundry sometimes. We do work very hard and we're very busy. You might not hear about all of those, but I can assure you that, my staff is, not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs up and down. Okay. Great question. So. There's one thing. Do you want to talk about the survey?
Oh,
that
you can go. You can talk about it.
You remember how it was going to go? I mean, I remember the survey, but how it was going to get pushed out.
So we met with James this week to kind of go over some things, and one thing that came up in conversation was because on our calendar we had talked about some opportunities for the community to come in and kind of give you guys some feedback, and from our perspective, what we kind of learned from the multiple public engagement sessions that we had was that it's really hard to get face-to-face communication with the public. So we had discussed, well, yeah, that is true. We had discussed with James possibly doing a survey just from you guys that would be put out from you, just a very quick, like 2 to 5 question survey. You guys could help us kind of script what those questions were and what you wanted to know from the community, and then we could get it out to the community for you, just so you guys could get some of that feedback from the community. And we also during our own previous
the text question.
We did a survey as well. So is that in there, the survey? Well,
I think it's on
I
the
didn't, I
website.
didn't put it in there, but I will. I'll print a copy of it and get it.
We have
Yep.
survey results from the survey that we conducted, which was a little bit lengthier of a survey than what we're kind of thinking for this, but just some high level questions, more so like, because one of the other things, sorry, I have a bit of a headache right now, so my brain's kind of all over the place, but one of the other things that we talked about with James was kind of the different phases of the process that we're kind of in right now. So right now, the group is in this exploratory phase, if you will, and we kind of identified, well, James really identified the three phases of this focus group. One being the exploratory phase, two being kind of the, okay, let's decide once we've decided what needs to be the facility, then where does the facility need to be? So we have the exploration phase, then we have the location phase, and then we have the financial phase. So currently we're in that exploratory phase, then we'll enter into that location determination phase, and then we'll enter into that financial phase. Once we've determined what it is, where it is, then we determine how we're going to accomplish paying for it. So on the calendar, previously, the calendar that you guys have in your binders, that calendar had some kind of flexible dates towards the end that were more discussion based. We've kind of revised those later dates to be more focused on those three categories. So we have a specific date that's dedicated to, I think it's, which meeting was it that one of the meetings we had split, there's a very short presentation that we had, then the second half, the entire second half of the meeting, if not more than half of the meeting, would be dedicated for you guys to just spend it on the exploration discussion, if you will. And then the next meeting, we could have a continued discussion on exploration and location. And then the third discussion topic would be then the finance. So
that would be the January, the second meeting in January. We would bring in some presenters, but where it says group discussion, you might focus on, the suggestion was on, well, go ahead, sorry.
The exploration,
Exploration.
what it is that we're trying to achieve. And right now, we're still kind of in the resources. We're putting all the information out, allowing you to, ask the questions and determine the what is and learn all the information that you need to know about operations and things like that. But, eventually we need to get into the part where you guys really start the discussions on, okay, this or that, or this or that, do we want the shelter? Do we not want the shelter? Do we need municipal court? Do we not need municipal court? Do we need the animal shelter? Do we storm shelter, animal shelter, those types of things? So that's kind of where we went with that. And we got to the survey because we had a date on the calendar for public engagement, and we felt like maybe it would be more beneficial if instead of having the face-to-face public engagement, we went with the survey option to extract those questions from the community. But this is actually more of a question, I think, than a tell. So I'd be open to hearing what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, that's the best way to get the opinion of people, because obviously, what was the turnout whenever you guys had the open houses at the police station the last few
Less than a half dozen at those open houses, but the survey that we did put out, I don't remember how many results, but it was well over 100. We had 110, 115
which is still not
survey results.
a lot of people, but it's
It was,
much
it was
more
better than the face-to-face.
More than
It's much better.
4 to 6 people.
Were you planning on doing like just an online survey or like sending out the newsletter?
We haven't gotten that far yet. That one we put it on Facebook, we put it on the website, we
Hand delivered it to those that, at the senior partners that we knew weren't into the technology.
We did try to utilize, we utilized utility emails, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Utility emails, mass emails, from the utility, from the city halls.
For the emails that we have, we don't have.
Not everybody has the emails, but.
So
When was
just,
that done?
I'm sorry?
When was that survey done?
That was done earlier this year.
This year?
Yeah,
Prior to
prior to
the August vote.
Yes, prior to the August vote. I'm not sure if the results actually tell you when I pushed that out, and I'm sorry, everything's falling together. It was this past summer. Yeah.
So it's fairly recent though.
Yes.
So.
And I will provide these to you.
The
You're
only,
gonna provide those next meeting then?
I can actually have Karen email you the results prior
That
to the
would be
next meeting.
great. Because I see it as, since it's been recent, I don't know that there'll be, the questions that were answered may already be what we have in
It
mind.
might help you develop
And I
additional
don't know
questions.
that we would come up with something, a question that would need to be covered besides those. And it might be doubling up our, what's already been done.
I'll give you an example
repeating.
of a feedback, not specifically, but just animal control is a very passionate, important topic to those that completed the survey.
Right.
So just so you know that that's an important topic, I know that's an important topic, so how do we bring animal control and a program of animal control to the public, through facility design? That's just one example out of that, and I'll have Karen send you all that too.
Did any of you fill out this survey when we sent it out? Did you, Talon? Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay.
Well,
And
somebody.
it was an anonymous
somebody bugged me
survey,
about
we
it.
didn't collect any data, but it does have some good information on there to allow me the direction of the department and how we do future budgets. I mean, I'm gonna use the survey results to sit down with our finance director here during budget discussions, so that we know how to properly, what programs need to be funded a little bit better, so we can serve what the public wants.
yeah, I
Well,
would.
we know that animal control is very important. I came from a town of over 8,000 people, and I actually had to call animal control to come and get a skunk that had been run over out of between my neighbors and my yard, because it wasn't dead, but it was paralyzed in the back. And they said, we don't have an animal control officer right now. So the police had to be dispatched out there to figure out what to do about that. I won't go into the details. They did take care of it, but
I've had to wrangle with
it was
stuff
very
before, so I might have
confusing
something to share.
without animal control being able to come there and do something. So,
We know it's an important part of our department and what services we offer. And so, it's a young program. The young lady I had working there, wonderful. She found, I'll put it a better job, for her. So rural department test, we struggle with that in law enforcement, and we'll try and talk our way through how we can do better for that. But, so I'm without an animal control, but that's not mean I'm not looking for one. I'll hire the right sort to come in and do that job. But it's also only 50% of her job. She's doing codes over here. So we're trying to find a mechanism to make sure, can we split that? And those are obviously discussions we're going to continue to have, but we want to continue to offer that program. And clearly the public wants it. We know that.
and I see this where it would be important to have someone full-time doing that. It's also important to have somebody with codes enforcement, I think, full-time.
Correct.
The other thing, and with talking with Maureen there, a facility off-site, I think sounds, in my opinion, sounds better than one at the same location as the police station. You've got to have an outside area. Those dogs are going to be barking, things like that.
And that's some of the feedback we got at the, our open houses when the 4 or 5, folks did come in. Some of their concern was the noise, and if the facility, and depending on the location of the facility, if it's in a residential neighborhood or even in a business district, the dogs do create noise. There's a way to minimize that, but they're still going to create noise. So an offsite, we've been exploring different options for offsite construction, separate from the police facilities design.
Yeah, and that's just my 2 cents.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Just one thing, I do think it'll be beneficial for you guys to see the survey. I will say, I think our survey was a little bit higher level about the department as a whole, where maybe you guys would want to ask more questions that are honed in on what the community is seeking from the facility. But I think it'd be great for you guys to see the questions that we did ask.
Yes.
I think one thing that the questionnaire needs to find out from the community is, really basic one, what do they want Odessa to be? A lot of people don't want Odessa to grow. They want it to stay small. If we're a community of 5,600, we don't need a police facility for a city of 20,000.
We've asked that I believe I asked that question in a roundabout way on our economic development survey we sent out as well. So I can provide you with the answers to that question from that survey.
I looked at some of the growth for Oak Grove, for example. Over the last 20 years, they've averaged 2.56%. Over 20 years, Blue Springs has grown 1.1% over the last 20 years. Brain Valley has grown 8.9% per year over the last 20 years. But most of that was prior to 2011. So I'm not sure even at 20,000, are we overshooting what our growth is really going to be? But the basic thing is, does the community want us to grow? Do we have a master plan in place that's going to support the growth to get to that 20,000 people? We'd have to grow 3.2% per year for 40 years to hit 20,000 people. So we'd have to have some pretty phenomenal growth just to get to 20,000 people.
Well,
At the city limits that we have now, if we had 10,000 people, the size that our city limits are, our population density would be almost the same as what Blue Springs and Brain Valley is. So we've got some pretty basic fundamental planning and things that we need to learn about ourselves before we really know what kind of police facility we need to build.
The thing is that people want a town to grow or not. It's going to grow. People are moving this way.
Maybe around us,
They're coming this
the
way.
area is gonna grow. Sure.
Yeah, right. It's going to grow whether you want it to or not. If you want to live in a ghost town, then suggest those people probably move.
The one
Because it's
thing
not-
in common, all bedroom communities have is high taxes. So
Well-
that's a basic thing we've got to decide.
Well, I think something else that we're forgetting is that too, one thing that we learned tonight is that not only are we storing our own evidence and dealing with our own issues in our own community, but we're also helping other communities. So regardless if we wanted a small or large facility, we have to think about how Odessa plays into Buffalo County as well. We're the largest town in the county, so, and kind of like you said, Odessa is gonna grow whether we want to, like it's grown substantially since I moved here. The town that I grew up in.
The city that's growing or the area around.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump in and just say,
Can't ask the city to pay for the police facility to support the county.
the one thing I hear over and over again is people say it's gonna grow, other people say it's not growing. It hasn't grown that much in the last 20 years, it's not growing. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, because we don't know what's gonna happen. If the interchange that comes in with the highway, that gets expanded, and there's things that may change. I'll go back to what I said last meeting, and we're not gonna grow really fast until we get things like a grocery store here. And to me, that's a big deal. I think a police station is, what we learned tonight is, I think what most of us probably knew, when you see it, that is not an adequate facility. It's just not. So we have to give credit to the Josh and the police force, that they're making the most with not a whole lot, which I talk to a lot of people in town, and what they'll say is, I make the most with not a whole lot either. In their own home, I like to have a bigger house. but I can't afford it. So it's gonna come back down to money, and I think sometimes. But jump back to the grocery store thing is, I mean, taxes are gonna, we don't wanna have to raise our personal taxes as much. We've gotta have more sales tax. And like, I think what, I said before was, I mean, grocery store and things like that, retail, that's where that's gonna come up, it's gonna grow. So, I mean, there's no doubt we need a police station of some type besides what they have. And I think everybody should appreciate what they've done with what they have. But there's so many other aspects, like what Bruce saying, around Odessa grows. Odessa is the biggest school district by far in the area, but that's partly because of the area around Odessa, not just the city. I mean, we're not that much different than Higginsville, but our city is a whole lot bigger than Higginsville. I mean, 200 or 300 kids, say in the high school compared to Higginsville, more. So, and I know, I mean, people say it's gonna grow, but I'll tell somebody that, I'm not gonna say, you're on that committee, and what are they saying is that, well, talk about it's gonna grow. They'll say, oh, they've been saying that for 30 years. And that's just what, so, but I think it goes back to, if we want to get something done, whatever it is, we got to sell some of these people. I don't want to say sell, that's probably the wrong thing. We need to inform people of some of the needs and get them on board with the issues.
Well, the other thing is it's not just the city growing, but, I know from my prior city, our town actually went down in size, but the county grew. And those people come into town. Some of those people come in and commit crimes in town. So you're dealing with more people, or people that come from Kansas City or any other city that come here and want to cause trouble. So, with more population, you have more number of crimes. I don't know if the percentage goes up, but the number of crimes will.
I'd be curious what the population of, I was looking at it just in the last couple of days, because I was doing, we're in the county, we're 33,000, something like that. It's in that neighborhood. And what was it 20 years ago?
And so I actually know this answer. I looked it up this week. The 33 number is the census data that is always wrong. So I would still hold us to the 32 that came out with the actual census.
Yes, and that's, it did say that.
And that was up from 30,000 20 years ago.
20 years ago, it was
Yes.
30,000.
Yes.
I was gonna say, when I used to teach civics or something, we talked about this, and I wanted to say 29,000, 25 years ago, so that's, so in 20 years, the county's grown 3,000 people.
Can I
Was
throw a
that
few
20
more-
years
a
or
little
10
bit more
years ago,
details
the
on
last
that?
census?
The last census being 2020. To throw a little bit more context in for you guys, we were one of 2 communities in the entire county that grew at all in the last census. The other one grew by like 1 person. And we are growing, Lafayette County shrunk in census overall in that 10-year right there. So there are a lot of factors into growth. All of the growth essentially in the county is rural Bay City and the Odessa area.
I think we're actually getting ready to see if we really are growing with as many houses that are being built right over there. So I mean, that's gonna be able to tell us a lot, because how many houses is that showing?
Where?
Right here.
Like 120 or 130
Yeah, so I mean,
total.
depending on how, and I do think that we're gonna see maybe a larger push to move out here. I know a lot of people in Jackson County are super upset about the time-based rates. And I know I have a lot of friends that are very upset about how low my personal property tax is compared to theirs. So and then how long were we not allowed to build? Because that just got.
Like 4 or 5 years in 2016.
2016.
It was close to 10.
What?
It was close to 10 years. So.
I thought it was 2012 to
No, it
2016.
was before 12. I think it was at least 11 or 10.
Maybe
It was
11-ish. We also have 60 new units at Pine Creek as well, and then Hunter's Ridge. It was, the full plan on that was close, thought it was, I can't remember the total houses on the full plan for Hunter's Ridge, but, it was quite a few as well. I don't remember exactly how
There's
many.
another 20 on the new road that they haven't completely constructed, but that's the next phase. There's another 20 homes there.
Yeah,
And then there will be another 20 homes.
I think it's upwards of 100.
Well, then you have on the east side of town, the apartment complex or whatever it's going over there on Johnson
Yeah.
Drive.
That's
And that was just on Pine Creek.
That's 60.
So what we're looking at, over 200 new homes this
Easily.
year alone.
Yeah.
So we have 3,000 some water hookups, I think. And we're talking about 40 houses this year, 50 houses. So that's what percentage?
We'll have, I think we'll have more than 40 or 50.
Well, so it kind of, the feedback I'm hearing is we'll get this survey, we'll get a survey out to you. You guys can start giving us feedback on maybe what you want us to put into a survey, get that pushed out to the public, probably sooner than we expected the public feedback in February or January. We could get that even, towards the end of this month or right after the holidays.
Can you send that out as a text?
What?
Can we use our text system to text the community with that survey? Like a link to the survey?
No, I don't have a way to text residents.
I just know we had that one mass text that came out in the past, like when our trash changed.
Oh.
You get that from Republic Trash.
No, we got it
No,
from
we got
here.
it.
It was like a text.
We'll look into it.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
Because if we could text everyone, I think some of the younger
Yeah,
generation.
we'll let you know what
might-
methods we can send it out to the public on.
Yeah. One thing just on the sales tax, one of the things from last time. So our projected sales tax for this year for a half cent is 346,000 for projected half cent for this fiscal year. And last year we brought in 334,000 for the half cent, and the year before that, 320,000. So we were basing our projections for the calculations off of that 2022, 2023 data. And we were calculating out the payment schedule. And then our top 5 highest sales tax grossing businesses in town are Ritchie Brothers, Odessa Wind Supply, Dollar General, McDonald's, and Whistle Stop.
September transportation tax is a half cent. Transportation tax
Yes.
is a half cent.
Yes.
6 months through September was 208,000.
Yeah, so I think that number that you were referencing was for the entire transportation funds revenue. So that also included our grant revenue for the TAP project.
So that 208 is the taxes, grant revenue.
Yes.
I'll finish up real quick, and I know we'll end the meeting. I gave everybody an itinerary, and this is just an itinerary for the next meeting, our tour of the Sedalia Police Department. And I'll just state, I'm good friends with the Sedalia chief, and we talk often. Some of the concern might be, well, they're a larger community, it's a larger police facility, right? That's not what I wanted to bring to the table. What I wanted to bring to the table was the programs they offer. A Sally Port, a detention center, an evidence room, administrative offices, a modern technologically advanced facility for you to look at. The square footage is nothing what we're looking at doing. They're a much larger police department. I recognize that. But the purpose for that particular tour was a newer facility that they could explain the ins and outs of how they constructed it, how they went to the public for it, and why they put what they put into it. And they give you an opportunity to interact with those folks. But you can look through that. And then the next 2 pages is just the layout that was presented for the 8.4 facility to the public. Of course, this isn't blueprints by any means. It just shows the programming that went into it. And then the 3rd page, you'll see that we put some black marks in there, right? Well, that's just me going through trying to take out 20%. We get that 8.4 down to 6.5, which is what what the community felt we could afford with that, with the sales tax push. So you'll see what we took out of that facility from page 2 to page 3. All of animal control came out, and then pretty much 20% of the remaining areas. We eliminated a couple other spaces in there too.
And the black marks are not precise. So
Yeah.
like, for example, on the holding cells, like the black mark still shows that there's 2 cells, but the black mark is to represent that we took out 1 cell and left 1 toilet. So the holding cell is now 1 cell, 1 toilet, the processing room, but it was a 20% reduction.
Basically
So,
me taking a Sharpie.
yeah.
Just trying to cut out.
Don't hold the
without
black
paying our-
markings to
We
be
decided we
precise.
weren't going to pay the architect so close to the election to try and come up with the reductions in another diagram. So this is my attempt to take out about that 20% and show some visualization to it. So if you have any questions next time, as far as the itinerary when we leave, I do have Echo Ride has partnered with us for transportation, so we'll all meet up at the city hall, jump on a bus and get over to. If you know tonight that you're not, I know that you're not going to be able to make the trip because you're working. That's fine, I understand. It was best time I could get was an afternoon schedule. I do have the sheriff's department will be an evening schedule, so hopefully it'll be more like tonight where it'll fit your all schedule a little bit more. But if you know you're not going to be able to make it, let me know ahead of time. That's fine. And if you can be, please be at City Hall at noon, and we will jump on the bus. We'll head to Sedalia for a nice tour, and then we'll get everybody back over to Odessa, hopefully no later than 4 o'clock. Okay, it'll be about about an hour drive, a little less over there, about 2 hours worth of tour, unless you guys have lots of questions, and then just about an hour to come back home, about a 4-hour field trip. So, if there's any questions about that, please let me know. I did put some things to consider on there when you're looking at that, and bring your questions, because the city administrator, assistant city administrator was the former chief, and now the new police chief. They did this project together. They would certainly answer any questions you have about how they were able to accomplish that. Okay. Shauna, do you have anything else?
Nope.
One other quick question on the shelter. Did we ever identify another area that would qualify for the grant money?
For the not the canine shelter, for the storm shelter, right?
Yes.
So we can reapply for that grant every year. They're the 3 that I told you about. We would just need to know, we wouldn't be able to apply for that particular part of the grant until we had an idea of what it was going to cost, what it was going to look like, and some.
It has to be big enough to cover the population within a half mile.
Correct. You'd have to reload, if you, let's say you put it in the spot we originally proposed, the 1912 field.
Right.
We would have to shelter 2,400 people.
My question is, did we identify another place where that shelter can be built so that it would be a better use of that 1.6 million, building a bigger building to serve 1,000 people instead of 300 people?
So that's a very difficult question to answer, because are you willing to purchase the ground? Or are you wanting to go with city-owned land? If you want to go with city-owned land, I would have to do I had to tap into Pioneer Trails. We had to hire them
You're
for the
going
job.
way beyond the question, just the population.
I can't determine that unless I
We have
hire a firm to
population
do it. Yeah.
distribution map.
Yeah, I can't determine that population map without Pioneer Trails, and we didn't hire them to do that job.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to know the site first for them to determine the population, because it's within a half-mile radius of that.
Okay.
And it also includes a half-mile radius outside of our city limits. So if you move it to the edge of the city, your half-mile radius also has to include the county population. Where it was currently located was all city limit population.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's
if it was off Johnson Drive somewhere or out by where the new park is,
Yeah.
it would pick up the vacant farm ground as well as the people within the city limits
Yes.
Correct.
in that
Yes.
corner.
Correct. And I just can't determine the population without them doing the study for me, and we'd have to hire them, which we could if you guys felt that that was a program that you really wanted to bring to the public, was a storm shelter, then yes, those grants do come into play, depending upon where the facility was located.
That just seems a wiser use of that money to get something 4 times bigger for the same dollar.
Understood. And that's certainly up for discussion. The administration at the time, wanted to offer that to the public. We just couldn't do it for the grant.
Right.
We'd have to build a bigger facility and spend more money to build that facility. You can still build a storm shelter, a smaller one, just not utilize the grant dollars to do it, if you wanted to. Great question. Thank you all. Sorry we kept you about a half hour later than we normally do, but you guys this was a good interaction, and we appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, James. You too.
Oh, real quick.
Thank you.
You need to keep any of those.
If anyone's really interested in that population growth aspect, I've got the background knowledge on what our growth has done and seeing how it compares.
So it's one that I actually talked to for a little bit. So they're actually just, outside Warrensburg.
I would expect that, I concur.
That'll be the one, that we go to the.
It took me a long time. Oh, looking interesting. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
Have a Merry Christmas, yeah.
No pressure.
Change your documentation. So, yeah, now she has a document. And